Hi, my name is Winsley, and welcome to my video diving into the screenshots I took from the first gameplay stream covering Archon Prophecies, which is the next expansion for Age of Wonders 4 and is coming out August 12th. Just like I've done with previous gameplay streams by the devs, I went through and took screenshots of all the interesting numbers and mechanics that popped up for a few seconds so that we can look at them together. I have to admit, I didn't spend as much time trying to go through the stream and pick out these screenshots because, as people who watch the channel are aware, I recently had a collapsed lung, and as a result I may go a little bit slower, try and take some breaths and make sure I don't rush too quickly back into this coverage. But I missed it. I wanted to make a little video, and I think there's some really cool stuff that they showed off here. I will have timestamps below, so if you want to jump to any particular topic or concept, you can do so. I will also be posting these images to the official Age of Wonders 4 forum, so if you want to look at them with me, you can use the link in the description below. Important disclaimer, a lot of the numbers we're looking at today are from a relatively early version of Age of Wonders 4, and these numbers are likely going to change quite significantly after Archon Prophecies come out. One of the things that the devs do really well with Age of Wonders is that they take the feedback from the community and they change the numbers in the game so that the balance is closer to what people overall would like for the game, not just in multiplayer but also in single player. So yeah, without further ado, let's start looking at these screenshots. I got a lot of them. I've got 14 pages worth of screenshots here, and some of them are a little bit more interesting than others. I tried to bring the most interesting ones to the very top of this list, and then like a lot of the stuff towards the end are just little things that I noticed while watching. But let's start off with these new vision quests. You have the Vision of Promise, the Vision of Destiny, and the Vision of Ruin, which all work somewhat similar to each other, meaning that they're exclusive to one another. If you've got Vision of Promise, you can't get Vision of Destiny, and they have a quest line that starts at the very beginning of the game. On the first turn, on your arrival in the realm, you have to interpret a promise. So if you take the promise, you can get the order one, the materium one, or the nature one, and once you do that, you gain a powerful throne city upon completion. I think Provis was making a video for them that recently said that you get like a new city if you complete this. So that sounds really nice, getting a free second city that's probably better than your starting city. It's going to give you a lot of, I would assume, momentum in the game and allow you to potentially rush other players down a little bit quicker. This is like the early game vision quests, and the Vision of Destiny is designed more for mid game. That's something they talked about in the stream, and the Vision of Ruin is something that's going to take the longest to complete, probably have the biggest impact, and the modifiers are just global. These things just affect everybody on the map. I would imagine the undead one just makes everybody return from death and become like a skeleton unit, and if you're the one that completed this, I assume those guys are on your side. I don't really know. They did choose the Vision of Vision of Destiny, Astral Affinity, the Scholars one in this stream. So hopefully they're able to complete that before Archon Prophecies comes out and we can actually discuss what you get there. I know that in the video, should have actually grabbed a quick screenshot of it. He was completing one of the order ones, and there was something about all the units get extra status effect resistance, I believe is what he said. Yeah, I should have gotten this screenshot. I don't know why I didn't. Now I'm looking at this and thinking like I could have had more good information for the people. But the idea here is that basically you get a throne city for the early game stuff if you complete that quest, and then if you complete this quest, these 6 different options all will give you different things on your units when you complete them. And of course, yes, you get a little bit of variety on your affinity. You can get 2 affinity out of this choice right here, which is more than what most society traits give you. Usually you get like 1 affinity. So this one will give you an affinity and a thing you can complete a little bit earlier in a game. This one will give you 2 affinity and something that you complete a little bit more in the mid game. And then this one is, yeah, as I guessed, as I was thinking in my head there, plus 1 affinity of your choice. So this one actually seems really good for getting you affinity and empire skills a little bit quicker. But it's hard to really know until people have played around with this stuff. And discussed in detail. There's Chaos, Astral, and Shadow that you can choose between for the late game quest lines. I have to assume that everybody's going to go to war. If you do the Chaos one, it says War shall engulf the realm. Astral Affinity says Arcane shall dominate, and yeah, Death will reign. It's other than that, we don't have much to go off of. So let's move on to what it says here specifically for the Vision of Destiny Astral. So it seems to indicate that if you use, is that 2,000 casting points either in combat or on the world map, then you're going to get this part of the quest complete. You need to bound a gold ancient wonder, and you need 2 sets of magic materials. That's not 2 magic materials, that's 6, because each set has 3 magic materials. So once you have all of that, you're going to trigger an effect that gives something to all of your units that's related to the Astral Affinity. So I don't know, maybe like extra magic damage or resistance, that kind of stuff would make a little bit of sense, right? I'm not sure if there's anything else hidden here in the text, but one interesting thing I saw earlier is that you do get 10 mana per turn if you take this quest effect. If you take the wait a minute, they didn't take the Destiny one. I'm seeing now there's 3 choices. This must be the Ruin one. So this is the late game quest line, and it seems to be giving them mana per turn. Right here you get 10 mana per turn if you take the Astral option, and if you take the Chaos option you get 20 draft per turn, and if you take the Shadow one, I assume it's, oh boy, I thought that I got a screenshot of that, but I'm seeing now, nope, this is just the second one of the Astral. So I would assume that it gives you something similar. Maybe it gives you souls over time. That'd be pretty cool, pretty useful, but I'm not too sure actually. The spell here that we have is an Architect spell that looks quite nice. It's going to give you a tier 1 lesser spirit based off of your dominant affinity, which will be really good at zone of control locking the enemies, because you can usually summon next to your enemy opponent. And even if your guy is a range attacker, if you're placed on their flank and they're not in defense mode, then you can take your ranged attacks and block their ranged attacks with zone of control. But what is usually better with summons is when you can summon in a melee unit. So like, for example, Materium has a melee unit. Frost has or Shadow has a Materium unit, the Frost Elemental. And I think there's Tide spirits that have melee attacks, and probably one more that I'm forgetting off my top of my head. But the new like Light Elemental, they're going to be a healer. So if you need to do some extra healing, you can get that guy, and then he'll be able to contribute to the combat quite a bit. It's cost 20 mana, 25 casting points, and is early game research. So you should be able to take advantage of this pretty early on in the game. The Resilient Incarnation is something that I've seen some people in Discord talking a lot about, because it seems like quite cheap and very effective. The fact that you get +1 defense and resistance in a 1 hex radius for 1 turn isn't like that amazing, but the additional +1 defense and +1 resistance per stack of Affinity Incarnate could get pretty out of control pretty fast. Because if you have, I think, 5 stacks of that means you're going to be getting 6 defense and 6 resistance for a relatively cheap costing spell. Relatively cheap spell. And I don't think there's anything else quite like that in the game that gives you that much defense for a single turn. But it is only 1 turn. That's probably part of the balancing that the devs had in the back of their mind. And the Affinity Incarnate comes from buildings, which people can burn down. So if you're at war with another player, they may just avoid your armies until they can effectively burn your stuff down with like invisible scouts or invisible units. In my multiplayers, we try not to have people burn down things instantly. I'm not a big fan of those, combining those modifiers, but those things are in the game through like the Chaos Affinity Tree, and Strife I think can burn things down a little bit faster. So like in theory, if you're trying to fight somebody who has this stuff, you can just like burn their stuff instantly right before attacking them. Doesn't sound that horrible if that's how you want to play the game. I mean, I wouldn't want to play the game like that, but it sounds like a good way to get around this kind of combat effect. this icon, I think some people were confused by and asking, what is this? And that's the new surveyor icon. You can even use it in enemy terrain. They showed that off in stream, that if you are near a free city, you can make that free city, or you can just go into their territory and survey this stuff. But they're saying, let's be friends with them and just wait until we can go in there without angering them and survey the land. They also said that you can now do this on friendly terrain, and I believe prospectors should be able to prospect friendly terrain that you annex. And I know I saw something else about prospecting, like now it is maybe not global but per player. I'm not too sure about that. I could be wrong about that, but that maybe even in the open beta. I haven't played Age of Wonders that much since getting out of the hospital, but I have been watching stuff, and I really enjoyed that stream. It got me excited and wanting to play the game a bit more. We have this effect that they showed off briefly. I don't think they talked about it too much, but it is going to heal 10 temporary hit points and dispel 1 negative status effects at the start of the turn on 2 units. The one that does the link, the cultivator, and the one that it chooses to link, which is quite good. That's something that has a pretty low cooldown. Cooldown 2 means you'll be able to switch it around between units fairly quickly. And if you wanted to save it, you can save it, but I think putting it down sounds not too terrible. Next, we have the Shade Maker, whose Titanbow does plus extra damage against large creatures. It does have the disadvantage of being a range attack, unlike polearm, so they do have trade-offs. They need to get reasonably close to the enemy. Range 4 isn't giant, and then they need to not get zone of control locked, which is a massive problem for most ranged units. The Incarnate shot is also something that's blocked by zone of control and does damage in an AoE. It's kind of like their battle mage and their polearm all in one. It's a very interesting design. We also have the Guardian, which is their shield unit, their tier 2 shield unit that makes it so adjacent enemies suffer -1 damage resistance associated with the affinity incarnate. So if you are an order focused architect, then they're going to be weaker to spirit damage or radiant damage. If you are a chaos focused architect, then they're going to be weaker to fire damage, and so on and so forth with all the affinity types. We also have the incarnate retaliation here that they showed off briefly, saying that adjacent attackers take 1 damage of the associated damage type per affinity incarnate. So similar again, if you were a order architect, then you're going to be dealing spirit damage to people when they attack you. Not bad, especially if you combine that with things like inner radiance, which they have here, which already reflects back a little bit of spirit damage. I think if you make them weak to spirit damage and you're reflecting like 4 points, it's a little bit easier to jump that up to the next number, right? Instead of 4 repeating damage going back on the enemy, maybe it's 5 repeating damage going back on the enemy. After all this stuff about the units, I got some screenshots covering the new Battlesaint class, which is super interesting looking. It's like a healer frontline type mix, whereas the Ritualist is more of a backline healer. And I really like the look of a lot of these effects. The left side of the path is the cleric path, which says at the end of the turn you gain 1+1 fervor, whereas if you go down the right side, that's more paladin focused, and it says landing attacks give you +1 fervor, and you get more for non-repeating attacks. So if you put like a charge item or something like that on the paladin, they can actually get a lot more fervor per turn if you go down the paladin class, but it just is more likely that they're going to be in danger if you do that. I think the paladin side of the tree would be more melee focused, whereas the left side would be more healing focused. I mean, if you look at the icons, you see like a lot of shields over here and armor looking things. This looks like the grace icon right there, whereas this is like a healing icon. This is like some healing icon, and this seems to be like to give you some resistance instead of just defense. So this seems like the more magical side, or maybe the ranged side of the Battlesaint class. Fervor is a new status effect that gives you +1 status resistance per stack, but it also interacts with these skills. I believe we see below. Where is it? Yes, Saint's Fervor gives you healing per stack of fervor that you have, and you can consume the fervor that way and start gaining more fervor through whichever interaction you took, the paladin or the cleric side. We also see that you get +1 fervor whenever this unit takes damage if you take this side of the paladin path. And we have Purifying Fervor, which says it dispels 1 negative status effect per stack of fervor consumed. So it just you can either clear a lot of status effects off yourself, or you can gain it a little bit quicker depending on which way you go with this choice. Warding Armor is the next one past Purifying Fervor, and it says unit gains +3 resistance and +3 armor against magic attacks. Defense is, is a pretty standard icon here, and it's a pretty standard effect. Gives you 1 resistance and some evasion. Doesn't seem as good as some of the other choices out there, but it can be good if you need defense and or evasion for dealing with your enemies. Warding Bond is an effect that's in the game. Other classes have it. This is a once per battle thing that says you link to a ally and they transfer the damage back onto this unit. That's probably something you would never want to take on your ruler, because you don't want your ruler to take extra damage by protecting other units. But like a hero, that sounds not terrible, right? Resistant Vanguard says this and adjacent units gain +1 resistance and +1 status resistance, which is just like an AoE thing. It's like you might be saying, oh, that doesn't seem like a lot of effects for your unit, but it goes in an aura, so you can get 7 units to get +1 resistance and +1 status resistance, which is almost like putting 7 resistance and 7 status resistance on 1 unit. It's a bit different, but it's spread out. Next, we have the Herald of Portents saying that this and adjacent units gain extra critical chance. So you can make it, at this choice, make them more defensive focused or offensive focused, which is interesting because a lot of the things that that this unit does is healing focused and support focused, but it appears like some good options for building him to help boost up the other units' offensive capabilities. We also have Radiant Retaliation, which is fairly far up the tree. I think that's, it's just a little bit left of these choices, and it is going to reflect, or not reflect, it's going to deal 5 spirit damage when adjacent enemies deal damage to this guy. So it's just gonna make it harder for people to want to even engage with the battle mage in the first place. But if they have enough health and status and magic resistance, they should be okay. Saint's Fervor says caster loses all stacks of fervor, and then the target unit gains +5 temporary hit points per stack of fervor. And I want to say that's not what they picked in the stream. I think they took the rightmost one, which I guess I forgot to get a screenshot of, but I think that boosts up the Battlesaint itself. That's silly. I think that actually got showed off in combat a few times. Caster loses all stack of fervor, and the target unit can gain HP. So this one is range 4. This one is range 1. It's cooldown 1. This one's cooldown 1. Why would you take that one then? It seems like this one just gives you more healing. Caster loses it, and the target unit gains that. Caster loses all stack of this, and the target unit gains that. Does not generate fervor. Well then, one just seems better than the other. What am I missing? Oh, this is free action. This one's free action, got it. Whereas this one's actually consumes your action point right here. That is arguably worse than, I would say maybe free action, allowing your hero to do other things is better, but it kind of depends on what you want your guy to do, because this could be 50 points of healing or 25. There's a pretty big difference between that in the late game. In the early game, if somebody's only missing 25 HP, you don't really need to use an action to try and heal them up. At least that's what I'm seeing here. Here we go. This is the free one. This, they did show it off. I just forgot to move it up. All right. Caster loses all stacks of fervor and gains 1 strengthen per stack of fervor and 5 temporary HP per stack of fervor consumed, as well as this being a free action. What is really, really neat about this one is that it gives strengthened. That seems really quite powerful. Getting 5 strengthened on a hero is nothing at all. That can really, really boost their damage potential and therefore increase your ability to remove units quicker, which is quite good. Cleric's Fervor grants +1 rally per stack of Fervor consumed. So, oh yeah, this is the left side here. Rally is giving you morale. Looks like that would just go on your hero so that they could probably crit more. Fervorous Discipline is saying support abilities grant +1 Fervor. Entering defense mode gains 3 Fervor. So you'll be constantly able, if you take this side, the left side of this stuff, you'll be constantly able to use Fervor, but it's attached to the left and middle one. I think one of these was the free action that's not a lot of healing on a target, and the other one was an action that is a lot of healing on target. But yeah, I like the fact that entering defense mode gives extra Fervor, because that seems like you'll constantly be able to do this stuff. I mean, cooldown 1 means you'll have to wait a tiny bit, but there's some, I think, other benefits just to having Fervor. We now have a little look at the special architect knowledge building, which Avoxel seemed to say he always gets that first because it's so good. Getting production is good, getting knowledge is good. Production is good because it helps you build other things quicker, and knowledge is good because it helps you get better technology and better interactions with units and spells and enchantments a little bit earlier, which is one of the things that I see the multiplayer community really focus on. They like getting those things as early as possible and hitting what they call the benchmark, or what you do is you take the turn number and multiply it by 10, and that really should be the amount of knowledge you're aiming to have. But it's more of a light recommendation in my mind than something you really need to meet in order to stay competitive. If you're playing with other people who play like that, you might need it, but I'd argue if they focus too much on knowledge, they're opening themselves up to early warfare that they can't really defend against, because they spend all of their resources on getting ready for the mid to late game. The Battlesaint has access to this, and I'm not entirely sure what time somebody took a screenshot of it, but it looks like maybe the architects have 2 new special things. I have to imagine Staff of the Spirit has something to do with the lesser elemental, but I'm not too sure. It might allow you to summon it, or it might just be some kind of new healing thing that turns your guy more into a cultivator where they link. I don't believe that got shown off in stream, so we don't really know. Next, we have a little screenshot of the town hall, basically, and I think there isn't much else here other than the screenshot of the cost of the Monument Foundation's cost. I don't think we actually have seen that this costs 200 Wonderstone and how much you get until this stream. I believe there was a screenshot that showed off the cost at one point, but I may have forgot to bring it over. I think it was something like 50 Wonderstone for surveying, but I don't think we actually got to see what you get for how else the other sources of Wonderstone and how much you get for pursuing those options. Next, we have extended settings for setting up your lobby, the game at the beginning. You can go in and make each individual AI either a different type of AI level, which challenging, I think, gives them damage boost as well as better decision making. And there's like a weak one where they kind of just don't make as good of decisions in general, and they're a little bit easier to play against. There are strategic bonuses that you can just apply across the board, so it's kind of like the challenging thing, but I think slightly different. You can give them extra starting cities, you can give them extra unlocked tomes, you can give them additional heroes to start with, and you can give their leader extra levels, just if in case you wanted something a little bit more challenging to play against without just turning every setting on the game to more challenging or brutal difficulty. I like this level of customization because it will really add to the diversity of experience when it comes to starting a realm. You can really make things unique and different using these settings. I don't love playing against AIs that have more levels, but I think giving them extra cities could be a really interesting way to give yourself more to try and go conquer. Now, let's see. There's also dead unit markers that are new to the game. You can toggle that off if you don't like the icons if it gets too busy, but that seems pretty useful because a lot of time when I have undead interactions, I struggle finding those things on the map, and I have to like spend a lot of time just clicking the undead abilities so I can see what I can interact with. So that sounds really neat. and we can now disable notifications we don't like. So if you don't like the one that tells you got a spell ready, you can disable that. If you don't like the one that says you're sieged, I guess you can disable that. That seems like a good one to have pop up and let you know what's going on. But there's also little things that are unnecessary, and being able to customize that experience is amazing. I think that's going to make the game a lot more enjoyable for a lot of people, and then people realize that they actually appreciate having some of these notifications. I want to say the diplomacy notifications for single player probably aren't super necessary, and turning this off doesn't sound bad. Research notification is good because you don't want to waste your research income. I think if you go more than one turn without researching something, it kind of just throws that research in the trash. And then I got a full image for my thumbnail here. I think this is really cool looking. This is the icon they get for Visions of Ruin that they picked in this game. I should notice that we were on that earlier before recording, but hey, that's what we got this time. And then this is a nice new background for Archon Prophecies. Wow, that's everything that I have for you this week. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you around, and have a good rest of your day.